Hey guys, Old Iron Will here again, and this is probably going to be the first in a series of videos I'm going to put out every so often, just talking about the history of some of my engines, where they come from, what had to be done to get them up and going. And right now you can see I'm sitting beside my 10 horsepower Fairbanks-Morse. Picked it up. I'm trying to think now. I should have looked this up before I started recording, but I believe it was probably around 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. I'll verify that and I'll let you guys know exactly when it was on the bottom of the screen there. So this engine was picked up at an auction sale, but I first learned about it a little bit before that. It came off a farm north of Shelbrook, Saskatchewan, just south of the Prince Albert National Park. So it was kind of in that, a little bit of grain land, a little bit of forest country, that area. It was laying on the edge of a slough when I first went and looked at it. The fellow that owned the land, owned the farm that was having the auction sale, he was 90 years old when I first met him, and he shared with me what he knew about the engine at that time. And he bought the farm when he was about 26 years old off his uncle, and the engine was laying out on the slough at that point in time. So he didn't know what it had been used for. It just that it always sat there, right? And it was on some big timbers on the edge of the slough and stuff like that. But it had been laying there long enough that those timbers had completely rusted away. Probably I'll take you a little bit of a walk around in it, but being on the edge of the slough, it definitely had water up to it quite a bit. It'd been in water at times, depending on how water levels and how wet the spring probably was and stuff like that. And you can definitely see traces of where the water used to be on this engine. It was stuck really bad, right? So valves were stuck bad, piston was stuck really bad. When we first got it home, I guess I should go back to the auction sale, right? It was actually I called it Ritchie Brothers, but it was Kramer at the time, Kramer Auction Sales. There was a sale the day before near Choiceland, Saskatchewan, and there was a nice Manitoba engine there that I thought my dad was going to buy, and I was going to buy this one, and I don't know, Dad kind of backed out last second and let Bob Porth buy the Manitoba engine. Here comes the snow off the roof. But anyways, Bob Porth got that Manitoba Bob Porth got that Manitoba at the Choiceland sale. And then this one was the next day, and really it wasn't an engine sale, it was just a regular farm sale. This was really the only engine there. And the only two people that were there for the engine were Bob Porth and myself. So if Bob hadn't have been there, I probably would have picked this engine up for $25, but I paid a whopping $200 for it. So, but anyways, Bob and I had a good chuckle before he left and stuff like that, right? So he probably got the little bit more desirable engine, but my dad and I have always had, a warm spot for these bigger Fairbanks. So you're gonna get them tuned up nice. They run so nice. So. So we did get it home. We had to unload it with an engine crane, so it, one of those shop cranes and stuff like that. So we lifted the whole engine and everything up off the trailer with that, because I didn't have a tractor or anything at that point in time with a front end loader. I was living in the town of Spiritwood, Saskatchewan. Again, very stuck. I'll share some pictures of what it looked like when it was on the trailer and stuff like that. It was pretty complete. The crank guard on it had been laid upside down inside the base of the engine and stuff like that. So it was pretty much rotted away. I did find a replacement crank guard on eBay. It was missing the magneto, but other than that, really the main components of the engine were there. Just stuck real bad. So within the next, then started the process of soaking it down, right? And got the flywheels and crankshaft removed, and, just kept breaking it down little bit by little bit so I could work on it. Got everything loosened up, but it had to have a bad freeze crack in the bottom of the hopper. The other big thing was the piston was stuck, right? And I worked on that piston for, I bet you, a year, and I could never get it out. And I tried all the tricks that I had. It was the first time I think I've had a piston where I couldn't get it out. So I actually ended up, because you can take the cylinder off these things, I ended up taking it to a machine shop, and they put it in their 50-ton press, and they pushed the engine out. I pushed the piston out of the cylinder for me. The cool thing was, and you hear this lots, that I was still able to reuse the old rings and stuff like that in it. So Also, the bottom of the cylinder was cracked at the time, so while I was at the machine shop, I had them welded. It's not the prettiest weld in the world. It does hold water, but you know, when I see some of the jobs that some of those other people do out there, this one's definitely got a scar. So so maybe I'll take you around. I'll show you a few of the other things on the engine. So so yeah, let's do that next. So if you look there, you can kind of see the white of, you know, where it was laying down kind of in the mud and the water and everything like that, as the you know, timbers where it was mounted on rotted away, you know, kind of fell nose first into the mud there a little bit. And I think even when you come around to the side here, even though it's near the top here right now, you can definitely see where that was all sitting in mud and water. And the other challenge I had with it too was that inside the open crankcase here, inside the cylinder there, water gotten high enough at times where it actually entered the cylinder. So back of the cylinder was pitted up pretty good. Right or wrong, you know, the front part of it was pretty good, but it was just near that back. So I decided just to do the JB weld trick where I cleaned her as good as I could and filled those pits with JB weld and smoothed it all out. And then, just give it a good hone at the back, sanded all that JB weld nice and smooth, and it's got a ton of compression in this engine. So so that way it runs excellent, right? I got a couple different videos of it on there. When I first got it going, it was just on kind of a cart that I could move it around in the garage and stuff like that. And then at an auction sale one time, you know, of a friend of mine, she was selling off a bunch of stuff, and she had this old pressure tank, or what, I'm assuming that's what it was used for at one time, was a pressure tank, or well, I'm not sure, but it's a John Woods tank, so it was used for plumbing at one time anyways. So so I used that. I needed something for a cooling tank, so I rigged up the plumbing and everything like that. You know, just had it on skids initially. Got a magneto for it. Needed a trip lever though. I had the wrong style trip lever on it. Rudy Adrian had one at the time, so I purchased that from him. Everything was good. It ran good. It was on. I've showed it a couple times just on the skids, but it was a pain to move. Right, I didn't have the equipment at the time to move it. And then a number of years later, I picked up a wagon. It was actually it was an international engine cart wagon for a saw rig, and I did put this engine on there for a while. It was just really so I could move it around. Didn't really fit properly on the engine. You know, kind of wasn't the right engine. I hated using that cart for that. So, I'd been on the lookout for some steel wheeled running gear up here. These engine carts are up here are as rare as hen's teeth in Saskatchewan. So you don't come across them very often. So my thought was I was going to find, look for an old set of steel wheel running gear. And I did find a couple different sets. I've actually picked up, I think, 5 sets now. I've used up 2 of them. I used up the best 2 that I've come up with. So it put them on some old 8x8 timbers that were rough cut and everything like that. Mounted it on the wagon like that. So I think it looks pretty good. Put a seat on the front of it. I showed it quite a bit this summer. Did lots of running with it this summer, and it ticks away nice. It's a beautiful running engine for as bad a shape as it was in at one time. It runs great. So, and then the cool thing was the old 90-year-old fellow that originally had the land. He didn't get to see the engine in person, but I was able to share a video of it running with him. So I don't think he thought he ever thought I'd get a part, more or less get it running. So, but like the end of the day, it does run good. And, it still shows its battle scars of those watermarks and everything like that, and how it was left out there. So anyways, who knows how long it would have been out there for, right? So definitely 65 years that he knows of, and when I bought it, and possibly longer, because it had been, like I say, it was already out there. So was it 70? Was it 75 years? It's a Canadian Fairbanks-Morse engine, so can't date it. It is 10 horsepower. It's I'm going to guess with the style of magneto, it's probably around a 22 to 1924, somewhere in there. So, a little over 100 years old now, I would think. I do have I got a few older pictures of it. I'll kind of loop in here as I'm speaking, and but anyways, it's one of my favorite engines, and it's definitely arguably the biggest engine I have right now. I'm not really looking for anything much bigger than that, just limitations of the equipment to handle this stuff and space requirements and all that, but anyways, I think that kind of explains what my 10 horsepower Canadian Fairbanks-Morse is. So I say hopefully folks like this series, and I'll continue to share some of my engine tales with you as we go along. I've been in the hobby for about 25 plus years now. So, I got a few things I've seen over the years, and just want to share some of the tales with you. So thanks again, everybody. Cheers for now.